Gentlemen, you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Call Paige Durham.
Okay. You'll step up here, please. Raise your right hand, please. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. And if you have a seat right there, please. And you can say your first name and last name, spell it.
Paige Durham.
You spell it.
Paigedurham.
Thank you. Questions, counsel?
And Officer Durham, where are you employed?
Marion County Sheriff's Department.
And what is your position there?
Right now I'm a deputy on patrol.
Okay, and back in May, particularly on May the 19th of 2016, were you also employed with the Marion County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And what was your job title back at that time?
I was a correctional officer in the jail.
Okay. And have you since gone through the academy and received some additional training to be a road officer?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did you work down in the jail approximately?
Approximately 2 years
Okay.
before I went to the academy.
Okay. And do you remember when the defendant, Angela Kilgore, was brought into the jail on May the 19th of 2016?
Yes.
Were you working that evening?
Yes.
Had you been on duty all day or just come into work?
I was just coming in.
Okay, for your shift.
Yes.
All right, and were you there when they brought her into the jail?
Yes.
Okay, and where was she taken?
Once she was brought into the jail, she was patted down right there in the booking area, and then she was taken into a holding cell bathroom to do a thorough search.
Okay, and did you participate in that thorough search?
Yes.
And if you would, describe for the ladies and gentlemen exactly what took place.
In the search in the bathroom?
Yes, ma'am.
We request for her to remove all items, all of her clothing, and hand them to us one item at a time. We search every piece of clothing, shoes, and then they are dressed out into jail attire, which is normally a jumpsuit.
Okay, and are they given different shoes also?
Yes.
Okay, what type of shoes are they given?
They're usually slides or flip-flops.
Okay, and did that happen in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And were there some items taken from Miss Kilgore's person in addition to her clothes and her shoes?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to show you what's already been entered as exhibit number 49 in this trial. Let's get to take a look at that. Can you tell us what's in that photograph, Officer Durham?
There's a wallet, an ID, 2 knives, some change, chapstick, necklace. There's an evidence bag out beside it.
And were those items taken from Miss Kilgore's person?
Yes.
Okay. And it looks like there's a Post-it note there over the top of what looks like a driver's license, and he's got it up there on the screen. So
Yes.
you can see a little bit.
Those would have been any items that were taken from her during the search.
Okay. Whose handwriting is that?
That is mine.
Okay. And so you made a list of the particular items that were taken from her person.
Yes.
Okay. And the 2 knives that you've got referenced there, those are the 2 knives that are there on the table.
Yes.
Okay. And I take it those knives were in her pocket.
I do not remember.
Okay, but they were on her person somewhere.
Objection. What's the objection? Foundation. All overruled.
They were taken from her when she was searched in the jail.
I do not recall if they were taken off of her person or if they were brought in with an officer, if they were removed from her on scene, or if they were taken out of her pockets.
Okay. The other items there were the wallet and the identification. Those are items also belonging to Ms. Kilgore.
Yes.
Okay? And so all of these things, you asked people to take the items out of their pocket, empty their pockets.
Yes.
And search for weapons, personal property, because you have to make an inventory.
Yes.
Okay? And that's what you did in this particular case.
Yes.
Okay. So these items that you listed would not have been items that were found at a separate crime scene? Would you have had any knowledge of those items?
Sustained.
Would you have had any knowledge of items that were found at a separate crime scene to put on that Post-it note?
No.
No, it's illegal.
You can answer.
No.
Okay. So that Post-it note is, you've already told the ladies and gentlemen, it's in your handwriting.
Objection.
Yes.
And what's the objection?
Repetitive, leading.
I'll sustain. Next question.
How did you know what to write on the Post-it note?
Those are items taken from Miss Kilgore in the booking area.
Okay. And I want to show you another photograph. It's been previously marked exhibit number 50, 0018. He's got it pulled up there. Do you recognize those items?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
That is money collected from Miss Kilgore during the search whenever she came into the jail.
Okay. And I want to show you another photograph that's been marked exhibit number 52. 0094. Do you recognize that item?
I do not.
Okay. So if that was within her property, you would have made a note of that.
Leading.
Would you have made a note if that was within her property?
What's your objection?
Yes.
Objection, leading.
Okay, I'll sustain.
And Officer Durham, at the time that Ms. Kilgore was taken into custody, do you recall what she had on her feet?
Objection, Judge. Objection. Custody means that that's up at the scene or the jail.
All over the room. You can answer.
She had a pair of boots on.
And so after she was outfitted in her jail outfit, clothing removed from her, was she returned to a holding cell?
Yes.
And what did you do with the items that were taken into evidence that were taken from her person?
Standard procedure would be to place them in property bags with her name on it, showing that it belongs to her.
Okay? And do you recall, particularly as to the boots or the clothing, being asked to use a particular type of bag to place those items in?
Yes, we were requested to put all of her belongings into a brown paper evidence bag.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Officer Durham.
You're welcome.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Durham, when did you became a jailer in and around that time, correct? Of her, Ms. Kilgore being brought in?
The previous year, yes.
Okay. And you're now a road officer with Marion County Sheriff's Department, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. And you were changing shifts about that time that Ms. Kilgore was brought in, correct?
Yes.
And you were, Ms. Stacy McCain was leaving and you were basically relieving her, correct?
Yes.
And did she come into the jail in handcuffs?
I do not remember.
Okay. And quite frankly, you don't remember how the gloves, I'm not withdrawing, how the knives came into evidence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's, yes, I'm correct, right?
Yes.
Okay. You don't know if it came in on, if an officer handed it to you, is that correct?
Yes.
You don't remember if it was put on the, well, let me back up, in booking, this is where this whole thing kind of takes place in the booking area, correct?
Yes.
And let's just describe the jail a little bit for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Typically when somebody's brought in, there's something called the sally port, correct?
Yes.
And that's how this, Ms. Kilgore came in, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the sally port is kind of like a garage with a steel door that opens up and somebody, an officer typically drives in, maybe shuts the steel gate, maybe not, behind them. And that's now a secure area, correct?
Yes.
And they basically bring them in maybe as far from that door to the end of the seal, at the end where the jury is. They walk that far into, what's the booking area? Would that be fair?
Yes.
And there are chairs at the booking area, correct, against the wall?
Yes.
And that's usually where potential inmates sit or people who are about to be brought into the jail and processed in, correct?
Yes.
And there's a big desk, I mean, I guess it's called the booking desk. It's a big, broad, kind somewhat like where the judge is sitting now, correct?
Yes.
The tall desk with kind of the places to put things and stuff like that, correct?
Yes.
And typically, there's a computer behind it so you can make entries into when people come in and things like that, right?
Yes.
And booking area is probably about the size of this room.
I would say it's smaller than this, but
Okay. And she's brought in, she wasn't fighting, fussing, or anything like that, correct?
no.
And that area is videotaped.
Yes.
And do you recall, was it Jerry Van Almen who brought her in?
Yes.
And for the benefit of the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he's, at that time, was a Marion County Sheriff's Department road officer.
Yes.
Correct. And he brought her in, and there were other people there, correct?
I don't remember.
Okay. And she was put in a holding cell.
Yes.
Was she patted down then, before she was put in the holding cell?
Yes.
Okay, did you pat her down, or Ms. McCain, or somebody else?
I don't remember.
And you don't remember the results of the pat down?
Other than the items that I wrote down, no, sir.
Okay, well, did you write down knives?
I did write down knives,
But you
yes.
don't recall how you got them?
Yes.
Okay. And was she brought in handcuffs?
I don't remember.
Well, you're now a road officer, you're kind of familiar with procedures. Back then, it would be uncommon for somebody who was arrested at a scene not to be pat down, correct?
Correct.
And for the officer's safety, it's a good idea to pat somebody down regardless of who it is, correct?
Yes.
And if it were in her, if the knives were in her pockets, typically an officer would locate that in a pat down, correct?
Typically in a normal pat down, yes.
And you pat people down when they come into the jail as well.
Yes.
Okay. Never, whatever happened, you sure she never fought giving them up?
No.
Never resisted giving them up?
No.
We're sure of that.
Yes.
Never gave you a problem when she was searched?
No.
Since you don't recall about the knives, you don't recall who handled the knives?
No.
Don't know if anybody had gloves or not?
No.
It was several hours after she got arrested until the time she actually got entered into the computer, correct?
Yes.
And that's typically because things are going on in the jail that you don't get to enter into the computer right away. Is that fair?
Yes.
And you do not recall what happened in this case, right?
I don't understand what you're asking.
She was booked in a couple hours later, correct?
Yes.
And what booked in means it's entered into the computer, correct?
Yes.
And in this case, you don't recall why the delay from the time she was brought in until the time it was entered into the computer was.
Objection.
No, I don't.
Asking her a question, that's not an evidence.
No, I think she knows.
No, I do not know.
Did you decide to put those things in an evidence bag, or did somebody inform you of that?
I don't remember.
Now, if you can put the last exhibit up on the... The one with the yellow sticker with her name? Yes. The yellow sticker, like on her license, you already testified that was your handwriting.
Yes.
Correct? That's not normal procedure for the way you write something and you log it in, correct?
Normal procedure would be in the jail, we normally, once a pat down is done, you write down the items that are taken at the pat down so that in the delayed booking, you already have a list of items that were taken from that person instead of having to go back through the entire property back again.
But that's on a post-it note?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a table inside booking? That's not, is it?
I don't know.
Well, certainly it's not typical that you lay out items like that, correct?
No.
And just 1 second. No further questions. Okay. Redirect.
I don't have any questions. Thank
Thank you, ma'am. You step down and freeze there before. Free to go. Who's next?
Now we call Paige Johnson.
So raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. Give them your first name and last name and spell both.
My first name is Roger, R-O-G-E-R. My last name is Johnson, J-O-H-N-S-O-N.
And you are a detective with the Marion County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir.
And I know your first name is Roger, but you're known as, you go by Chad?
Yes, sir, that's my middle name.
Okay. And Detective Johnson, how long have you been a detective with the Sheriff's Department?
Since 2005, so a little over 13 years.
And how long have you been in law enforcement?
Since 1999, so almost 20 years.
And Detective Johnson, were you notified about the homicide which occurred at the Whitwell Pawn Shop, Valley Pawn Shop?
Yes, I was.
And how were you notified?
Detective Blancett contacted me and asked me to gather some intelligence on a lady named Angela Kilgore, so that's what I did.
And were you able to ascertain what kind of vehicle she owned?
Yes,
And what was that?
a red Chevrolet Colorado pickup truck.
And Detective Johnson, did you respond to the scene?
I did eventually respond to the scene, yes.
And you also, on the May the 19th, were you with the officers when she was taken into custody at Foster Falls?
Yes, I was.
And did you examine the firearms that were seized?
Yes, I did.
Let me show you Johnson, it's been marked 47C. And this is, tell the jurors what firearm that is.
This is a revolver that was found in a black bag in the back of the truck.
And was that one of the firearms that was submitted to the TBI lab
Yes, it was.
that the agent testified about yesterday?
Yes, sir.
And we show you the photograph, and I'll ask if you can identify that picture.
Yes, I can.
Now, if we could mark this next exhibit, which would be, exhibit 99. And I'll ask, you put that up on the screen, please. And is there anything unusual on this weapon or that caused you to submit it to the TBI lab?
Yes, there is.
Zoom in on the- What are we looking at there?
We're looking at a revolver. What was unusual about it is we noticed the RBS along this area of the revolver. So we submitted that to the lab for their determination.
Okay. And you also had noticed some RBS on 2 of the other guns, all of which you submitted to the crime lab?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Detective Johnson, did you examine the federal firearms licensing book which Mr. Ridge maintained at the business?
Yes, I did.
And we have brought up a photograph of that, and is that the book that you examined?
Yes, it is.
Let me just show you a couple of pages from the books, and I'll ask if you can identify these photographs.
Yes, I can.
Sam, you mark these as photographs. And if you bring up 005, that'll be exhibit 100. Detective, we are looking at exhibit 100. If you could bring up the next one, too, Jenny, 0007, which would be exhibit 101, and explain to the jurors what it is we are looking at in these photographs.
This is a handwritten log of that book, and the columns to the left are a description of the firearm, the make, model, serial number, caliber, all those are noted in that section. The middle section is who that particular firearm was received from. In other words, who may have came in and pawned it or who sold it to the pawn shop. And then the columns to the right are once that firearm leaves the pawn shop or it's been sold, that is the buyer's information, and that's in the sold to section.
And those photographs, Detective Johnson, and you what you previously marked as Exhibit 10, which is actually the Federal Firearms Licensing Logbook. And is that where those photographs were made from?
Yes, it is.
And Detective Johnson, did you prepared a list of serial numbers of the firearms that were taken from the truck, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And those firearms would be, starting with exhibit, would be the collective exhibit 47, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And for each of those firearms, were you able to ascertain whether or not they appeared in this federal firearms book?
Yes, all the firearms do.
And did any of those firearms indicate that they had been sold?
No.
Was there any firearm recovered from the vehicle which was not reflected in the federal firearms licensing book?
There was a gun. It would not be classified as a firearm. It's a BB gun.
The BB gun?
Yes.
And would it be necessary to reflect the BB gun in your FFL book?
No, it would not.
Okay. And Detective Johnson, as far as the value of the guns, we asked you to ascertain the value, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And let me show you the document, and I'll ask if you can identify that.
Yes, I can.
If we could mark that as Exhibit 102.
Got any objection?
Well, it's not moving in the pattern, so it's not the final.
Thank you. Work on it today.
Yes.
I object to it.
So this is objection.
It has a list of valuations, I believe.
It does.
So what's the objection?
Judge, we have a sidebar here.
Sure.
Detective Johnson, as part of your duties in law enforcement, have you from time to time had to value weapons?
Yes.
And Detective Johnson, are you familiar with how you go about ascertaining the value of a particular firearm?
Yes.
And can you describe that process?
There are several different methods to obtain the value. One, there is it's called the Blue Book of Guns. It's put out by a publisher, which you can ascertain values of guns. There are websites, one known as gunbrokers.com, where guns are bought and sold on that site. You can ascertain the value of guns from that site. You can also utilize other firearms dealers, such as GT Distributors, Academy Sports, or any business that sells firearms. They will have a value listed for those firearms.
And Detective Johnson, being in law enforcement, are you generally familiar with the value of firearms?
Yes.
And Detective Johnson, these sites that you've listed, the gunbroker.com, Academy Sports, and GT Distributors, are they used to value firearms?
Yes.
And have you testified to these matters in other courts?
Yes, I have.
And as far as the process you went through, how did you actually go about ascertaining the value? And I'll start at the top of the list, the Glock 27 .40 caliber weapon.
The Glock 27 is commonly sold by GT Distributors, and that was where I obtained the value of that firearm.
And maybe for the jurors, are these valuations sort of like going to Kelley Blue Book for a car?
Similar, yes.
And do they list a range of value of the firearms?
On gun brokers, there is a range because you have multiple guns of the same make and caliber being sold. On the GT Distributor site, there is a range. The price of a Glock differs. For someone in law enforcement who is buying a Glock, they get a discount, and someone from the general public purchasing a Glock, that price is higher for the general public to purchase a Glock.
In ascertaining the approximate value of the firearms, did you use the high value or the low value?
The low value.
Your Honor, we'd ask, I think that's a sufficient foundation.
Board on this issue. I'll let you ask you some questions about.
Officer, when did you do this valuation?
Sunday night, I believe.
A couple days ago?
Yes.
This incident happened over 2 years ago?
Yes.
Values change over time, don't they?
I'm sure they do, yes.
I'll overrule the objection, I'll let him testify.
If you would put up Exhibit 102,
Yeah, Professor.
Sure.
give a copy of this to you.
No. If I could.
Detective, starting at the top of the list, the first item, and the evidence numbers 45 through the list there, those are your evidence numbers, the lab, or they're not the court evidence numbers?
No, they're not the court exhibit numbers, no.
Okay, all right. And starting with the Glock 27 .40 caliber, what did you value that at?
At $500.
And I notice you've put approximate value, so that number is not a hard and fast number. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's a fair statement.
The Desert Eagle you valued how much?
$700,
And the Smith & Wesson?
$355,
And the Taurus?
$264,
The Smith & Wesson item 49?
$300,
And the next Smith & Wesson item number 50?
$250,
The Taurus item number 51?
$300,
And number 52?
$600,
And the Brico Arms?
Braco,
How much was that?
$100,
Number 54?
$300,
And 55, the Taurus 9mm?
$200,
And 56, the Taurus 40 caliber?
$275,
And number 57, the gun we can't pronounce?
$174,
And the Taurus 9mm item 58?
$220,
And the Heritage Rough Rider number 59, what do you feel that was worth?
$190.
And what is the total, and you did not give it, the Black Ops revolver is the BB gun, is that right?
That's correct.
With a pellet gun?
Yes.
And you didn't apply a value to that?
No, I did not.
And the total value is how much?
$4,728.
And that's an approximate value, is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
Just one moment, Your Honor. Help y'all stay.
You'll take that down off the screen, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Detective, couple of questions. If you actually didn't, let me withdraw it. Was Felicia Tetherow one of the first names in that book of items, guns missing?
One of the firearms I did notice was had been sold by her to the pawn shop.
You didn't just notice it, you took note of it, a big note of it, important note of it, didn't you?
I did not take a big note of it. No.
Well, you questioned Jeremiah Tetherow about it, didn't you?
I don't recall if we questioned him about that particular firearm or not.
Do you recall talking to Mr. Jeremiah Tetherow about where he was?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and do you recall telling him, your probation officer basically said you weren't where he said he was, you were there the next day, and he got quite upset?
I recall there being some confusion over which day he was actually there until we got clarification from the probation officer of that date.
Well, did you tell him, quote, what if your probation officer says you weren't there? And Jeremiah Tetherow says, I'm 100% sure he will. You said, he didn't. There's no way I signed in, is his response.
It's hearsay as far as what Jeremiah Tetherow said.
What is that?
Judge, he said he doesn't recall, and help him refresh his recollection, as well as cross-examine him about the credibility.
Well, I think the objection was it's hearsay. So I didn't know which exception it would fall. So do you agree it's hearsay?
It's not offered for the truth of its content. Well, again, it's not offered for where he is, Judge, but I do believe it goes to his credibility.
I recall having an interview with Mr. Tetherow. I have not reviewed a transcript of that interview. I don't recall the exact quoted transcript, if that's what you're asking.
I originally asked you what the sum and substance basically was, and now you said you don't recall the exact testimony. Do you recall whether you told him that his probation officer said he wasn't there, and do you recall, let's start with that, do you recall saying your probation officer said you weren't there?
I recall there being an issue over the date that he was at the probation office. That's what I recall. You're asking me what I recall, and that's what I'm telling you.
Is it yes or no?
Yes, I recall there being an issue.
Did you say to Jeremiah Tetherow, what if your probation officer says you weren't there?
If that's what the transcript says, then yes, that's what I said.
I can play it for you if you want. Are you disagreeing with that?
I'm not disagreeing if that's what the transcript says. I'm telling you, I don't recall the exact conversation.
You first had confusion, but you first had information that he wasn't where his probation officer said, correct? Said he was. Let me rephrase the question. You first had information that he wasn't where he said he was, correct? At the time of the crime.
The first information we had was that he had reported the following day. That was later clarified.
Okay. And the only way you could have gotten that information was talking to the probation officer, correct?
I don't recall at that point if we had talked to the probation officer or if we had the local probation officers pull their contact notes from that.
So the notes, when you interviewed him, were 2 weeks later? Let me rephrase the question. You had information 2 weeks after, let me back up. Mr. Tetherow was interviewed around June 8th, is that right?
I don't recall the date that he was interviewed.
How about around June 8th, I think the question.
Yes, it could be close to that date.
Okay. This happened May 17th, correct?
Yes.
Several weeks after, May 17th to honor about in the first week of June, several weeks.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, it would have been a couple weeks.
And if they looked at contact information and they looked in the computer, they would see May 18th, correct? The day after this.
Yes. Once again, there was some confusion about the date he was there.
But the confusion was based upon an entry in a computer that said May 18th, 3 weeks later, at least 3 weeks later.
Yes.
And apparently, that probation officer at some point, did you actually speak to him?
Agent Wilson did.
Okay, well, you were here for Mr. Wilson's testimony, because you get to sit in here because you're the prosecutor, correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Wilson said you cleared his alibi, or words to that effect.
Yes.
Okay. Is that incorrect?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to ask that again. I'm not understanding what you're asking.
Mr. Wilson, TBI Agent Wilson, incorrect when he said you cleared his alibi.
I don't recall Agent Wilson stating that.
Did he say you made the determination of where he was at the particular time of this event?
I don't believe he specifically said that I did that.
Words to that effect?
No, I do not recall that part of his testimony. I believe he may have said that we as an investigative body together cleared that up, but I don't remember him specifically saying that Chad did that.
You say you make any sort of determinations when you did the joint investigation?
I'm sorry?
You recall him saying you made any sort of determinations with where Jeremiah Tetherow was with regard to this investigation?
Check the relevancy.
I'll overrule, but we're not going to talk about this much longer, so don't hesitate to make another objection. Go ahead.
Sorry, what's your question?
Do you recall Mr. Wilson, TBI Agent Wilson, saying anything about you making any determinations with regard to Mr. Tetherow?
I do not recall Agent Wilson saying specifically that I, Chad, made any determination.
Or words to that effect?
No, I believe he said that we made that determination together through the investigation.
The first call about this incident
Yes, I was.
for intelligence.
Yes.
And that intelligence was the running of a license plate.
No, it was not.
Was it trying to ascertain whether or not she, what kind of, who a red truck could have been belonged to?
No, it was not.
What was the first thing? You did a lot of work with regard to guns in this case, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that's you personally?
I'm sorry?
That's you personally, as opposed to the sheriff's department?
That's me personally?
Well, I'm not talking about the sheriff's department incidentally. When I say you did a lot of work, I mean, Chad Johnson did a lot of work
I did a lot of work on this investigation, yes.
with regard to guns,
I did work on the firearms of this investigation, yes.
okay? Detective Blanchett, at that time, was part of the ATF task force.
Yes, he was.
And ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, correct? That's what it stands for.
That is what it stands for. It's an acronym.
And you would think he had more expertise in the field of guns and a federal investigation than you.
No, he would not.
The relevancy?
I'll sustain. Next vote.
You know the Rich family?
Yes, I do.
And your family and their family have been friends for quite a long time.
I believe they have, yes.
And as a result of that, you knew Mr. Rich.
I did know Mr. Ridge, yes.
And you wanted to participate in this case, correct?
I was asked to do my job.
Well, there are other officers who can do their job as well.
I'm sorry?
There are other officers, part of the Marion County Sheriff's Department, that can do their job as well. Do your job as well and their job too.
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking my opinion of other
No, you
officers'
didn't
job
have-
performance?
You didn't have to do this. You said you were asked to do your job, but there are other people who should have done it.
I don't reject the relevancy, I'll sustain.
Who asked you to do your job?
Sheriff Bo Burnett, when he hired me
And when were you hired?
in 2003. 2005.
Okay, so in 2005, Bo Burnett asked you to do your job, and you know I was referring to doing your job with regard to these guns. You knew that when I just asked this question, didn't you?
No, Mr. Lipton, I did not.
Well, okay. So let me ask you this. Who asked you to do these guns with regard, who asked you to do your job with regard to these guns?
During the investigation, myself and Agent Wilson sorted out how we would handle aspects of the investigation. I have knowledge of firearms, and so I took that part of the job.
And so does Detective Blanchett.
I cannot speak to what his knowledge of firearms are.
So there are other detectives on the Marion County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, relevancy.
I'll sustain.
Did you see who put the guns in the back of the truck?
No, I did not.
What time did you get to the scene? The crime scene. What time did you get there?
Probably around 9:30.
So ladies and gentlemen, what we'll do is we'll take our morning break just a little early today, and I'll bring you back in here in about probably 15 to 20 minutes. Okay? So if everybody rise, please. See y'all back here in a few minutes.
Judge, for this purpose, can we just, I don't really see a reason to go through his qualifications, if that's all right with the defense.
Right, we'll see what the pictures like now.
Okay.
Obviously, the jury is back, we can go through this.
Well, yes, obviously, I will do it then.
And sir, if you tell me your first name and last name, spell it out, please.
I'm Dr. Thomas Deering, Thomas. Last name is D as in dog, Eering.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I could have and mark these for identification, the first would be 103, 104, 104 right now, these are on date, and 105, these are on date. Dr. Deering, when we met with you earlier this year, you indicated there were several photographs that you would like to use as part of your testimony.
That's correct.
And I'm going to hand you 3 photographs, and I'll just ask if you can identify those photographs.
Yes, these are 3 from the body. Our number is 16-1155, identified as a Jerry Ridge.
Those are pictures from the autopsy.
They are. They're copies of them.
Your Honor, he has identified 103, 104, and 105. And Chad, if you could put up Exhibit 103. And Dr. Deering, what are we looking at in Exhibit 103?
We're seeing the front and top of the body as identified. This body is severely charred. There are some spared areas on the back, but everything that we're seeing here has been burned. So you're not seeing the normal markings. There is a wound in the right upper arm. At the very bottom of the picture, you're seeing some fragments of bone of the right upper arm bone, and there is a wound of that bone. There's also deformity of the left arm that's a result of charring and normal burning, and what happens when a body is burned. It's pretty much the main features of
Dr.
that.
Deering, as far as using the photograph, could you explain to the court why you feel this particular photograph would be helpful in your testimony and aid to the jury?
Well, this particular is helpful because it demonstrates that this body was fully burned, and I believe was burned after the decedent died. So this is an attempt to obscure the injuries that were present that I was able to find in autopsy.
Your Honor, Dr. Deering, I'll hand you what's been marked as Exhibit, Exhibit 104, if you would bring that up, please, Chad. 104, it's 30-something. It's the neck. And we have Exhibit 104 for identification on the screen. And Dr. Deering, what is it we're looking at in that
I
photograph?
believe this is the one. This is the left side of the neck. So this is as if the decedent is laying down. The ruler is underneath a slit in the skin, and in my opinion, as I did the autopsy and looked at the structures underneath the skin, that this is a stab wound. This is a knife stab wound to the left side of the neck.
And Dr. Deering, why is it you feel that would be helpful to the jurors in terms of your testimony?
This will help in demonstrating that there are more than one modality, I believe, that led to the death of this gentleman.
Okay. And if we would put up Exhibit 105, which is 3136, Chad. These are all for identification. And Dr. Deering, we are looking at what's been marked for identification as Exhibit 105. And would you explain to the court what we're looking at in this photograph?
This is the right upper arm, and in this arm, of course, it's burned skin, but within the arm, I found a shattered right upper arm bone and recovered a bullet, and I believe this is the site of a gunshot wound.
And Dr. Deering, again, why do you feel this would be helpful to the jurors in your testimony?
It demonstrates, indeed, that it's hard to tell that there's any wound here at all, that the body has been burned and the wound has been obscured, and for location of the wound.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Lipton may ask a question.
Question. There are no injuries actually visible in 103, correct? That
Is
was
this
the first one?
the first one? Well, there's thermal injuries, but specific other injuries are hard to see on that overall
With regard
picture.
to the cause of death, correct? 103, you're not saying that the cause of death was due to burning, correct?
That's correct, I'm not saying that.
And with regard to 104, if we could take a look at that. This shows charring, correct?
Yes, it's charring of the skin, correct.
Okay, and how does that help you demonstrate more than one?
It also shows the slit wound above the ruler is visible in this, and that's a knife stab wound, in my opinion.
And 105, the next one? You see any injuries in that photograph?
Well, there's thermal injuries, but the specific entrance wound of the bullet I cannot show.
Okay, and you know she's not charged with abuse of a corpse, correct?
I don't,
Okay.
I know I'm here, so
So how is that relevant to
the
process?
the obscuring of wounds is not, it's not typical, but it's not an uncommon thing when a homicide has occurred to obscure the wounds by burning the body, and so these pictures demonstrate that that appears to have taken place.
You're not saying that Ms. Kilgore burned the body, are you?
I have no idea how the body got
You
burned.
don't know, you have no idea how the body got burned?
That's correct.
Could you bring up the first one, 103? Dr. Deering, in 103A, can you see is there damage to the right shoulder area?
Well,
Towards
the
the bottom
picture,
of the
it's
picture?
just, it's all charred.
Okay.
So the demonstrative of this particular picture is just showing that the body has been completely charred.
Okay.
But finding the specific entrance wound on the skin, I really can't do. I find the bullet both by x-ray and with my internal exam.
Okay. Thank you.
No questions from me. So, I think you said one reason you show those pictures is to show the body's burned, right?
Correct.
And you've already seen the picture, the body's burned.
Right.
So why do they need to see the second picture, if you know?
I mean, that established it for me.
Okay. And then you showed the cut along the neck, right?
Correct.
And then you couldn't really show the gunshot wound because it's so badly burned.
Correct.
So I assume you have, like most doctors who do this kind of work, you have drawings that show where the wounds are.
I believe I do. Let me just double check. And, well, I have indications of the location.
Right.
And the gunshot wound, I can't really see on the surface. That's more internal. As you saw in the picture, the knife stab wound area, we can actually see it in the picture.
And you got drawings that show that.
May I show you the drawing?
I don't see. And what I'm looking at is what these fine people usually do. They do really detailed drawings and they show where the injuries are. Okay. All right, y'all want to argue about this, or you just leave it aside?
I've been doing this a long time on whatever court is.
Well, an old lawyer one time told me, when you look at things like this, you need to decide whether the juice is worth the squeeze. And I think, if I think these pictures are inflammatory, it could be inflammatory. And I am concerned about giving the court of appeals a Kilgore issue. And that is a concern. Now, what got evidence in, we got evidence in of the burned body, terrible picture of the burned body. So that's where we need to do something. So if you want to show them that picture and say the body's burned, I think that's where it comes to evidence. But in regards to showing the cut in the neck, which you can see, but the shot, you can't see. So I have concerns about
Your
that.
Honor, the state would submit the cut on the neck. One thing that Dr. Gearing was not able to do, having tried all homicides, is draw either of the wounds. Normally, with the stab wound, we have whatever the incision is, and it's measured, etc. I think the photograph of the neck wound would be helpful to the jury. It shows the length, etc. I think the court's, it's hard to argue with the court on the picture of charred corpse. And the arm wound, I think that would be helpful to the jury, but
Let me ask for the defense what y'all's position is, what y'all think.
We agree with the court. We'll stipulate to the cause of death.
You'll stipulate to what?
Sorry, Judge. We'll stipulate to the cause of death if that would. But again, we agree with the court's assessment of this. These are horrific pictures that have already been.
All right. We're going to keep these three exhibits as identification. They won't be introduced to the jury. Certainly you can introduce your drawing that you did if the state chooses to do that. And then if you want to show that previous exhibit in regard to if you want to ask them some questions about the body, about the condition of the body.
we can do that. And Your Honor, we have the x-ray picture, which the court has already.
That was okay?
Yes, that's okay.
Right. Anything else?
No, we can have the diagram. I'll have Detective Johnson. We have to.
I'm not being disrespectful to you, sir.
Oh, no, sir.
Let me just make sure this is is that the same one?
Yes.
Make a copy of that and we can put it on the screen.
That'd be great. Okay, so if y'all can come back in about the continuance,
That'd be great.
Long. We're making that
Give us 15 minutes.
15, okay. Sure. And if you'll tell the jury, we'll start back in 15 minutes. And sir, you can sit down, sit back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.